That's right. Thank you.
There's some heaven elves in there, too.
Cool, cool. Well, give your sweet lady our love.
Good lady.
We'll talk to her.
I'd stay, but I mean, I'm going to check on her day. She wouldn't
It's understandable.
ought to be.
Yeah. Lesson 27 is where we're going to start this morning. Do you have lesson 27? Does anybody not have lesson 27? You do. Well, I actually have most of them right there. I may be out. If you want them, you're welcome to go through that little
27.
27 is what I've got.
Are we on 26?
We're on 27. We're on 27. Oh, you need a 27?
Thank you.
Everybody need a 27? I have one more. I may have two, but you're welcome. I'll tell you what. Danny, would you mind handing out 28? Let's just go ahead and get these out. Thank you. That's next week's lesson. Hopefully we get done with this week's lesson. I'll be preaching next Sunday morning, but I am leaving right after church and going over to Bowling Green. Mount Pleasant is church on the north side. It's about 15 minutes north of Bowling Green. They are celebrating their 185th anniversary as a church. 185 years. Long, long, long. So, which reminds me, we're not too far from 100 years. 1930s. Is it 19? I think 33 or 4. I think is what I read. It won't be long till we'll be doing 100. But 185, buddy, that's long. That's a long time. You're talking about steeped in the early Restoration movement. That is a church that has been around for a long, long time. I got one more, lesson 27. Does anybody need 27? All right, going one. Going twice. There you go. All right. We are in the Sermon on the Mount, and we are looking at Matthew chapter 7, verses 7 through 11. Now, let me get over there. Ask, and it will be given to you. Seek, and you will find. Knock, and it will be open to you. For everyone who asks receives, and the one who seeks finds. And to the one who knocks, it will be opened. Or which of you, if his son asks him for bread, will give him a stone? Or if he asks for a fish, will you give him a serpent? And if you then, who are evil, know how to give good gifts to your children, how much more will your Father who is in heaven give good things to those who ask him? So, this is another one of those very, very, very familiar passages in the Sermon on the Mount. They're all kind of familiar. It should be. But this definitely, especially when you're talking about prayer. We've been talking about prayer a good bit of late. And it's good for us to think about prayer from different perspectives. What God's looking for, what he's not looking for. And Jesus did address some of that in his lesson. We'll get some of that in just a second. But one of Jesus' this is one of Jesus' most memorable statements, and I think it's been kind of taken out of context. It's been applied in wrong ways. Some people have kind of had a look at prayer as being one of these special talisman that if you ask great things and you'll get great things. And so sometimes televangelists will really capitalize on this, and they'll get you to, if you pray, it's going to happen. So just whatever you want, God's waiting on you to ask him, and he's going to get. Well, a lot of times people are disappointed because God doesn't give us everything we want. Just like I think about the father and mother, or with children. Of course, that's been on our mind this weekend. It's been on our mind. School starting, just it's on our mind all the time. Our kids, our grandkids, it just seems to be something that stays with us. And our teaching them, hopefully, will cause us sometimes, because they're so want, need oriented, that we'll sometimes just say, no, that's just, I'm sorry, that we can't do that, or you can't do that. So, and that's the way God is. He's not going to give us everything that we want. Note other places in the sermon where prayer has already been discussed, where he talks about warning against certain type attitudes. Back in chapter 6, in verses 5 and 6, he talks about praying as the hypocrites do. In other words, don't pray to be seen of men. He says at the end of chapter or verse 6 that if that's your attitude, if you're just praying a prayer, I've heard these ornate, wonderful prayers, and if they're from the heart, that's great. But if it's just kind of, let me show people my ability to put words together, or my phraseology, or it's he says there they've got their prayer answered in what they said, but as far as his involvement, God's involvement, obviously that's not something that he is going to be hearing and responding to in a positive way. And so he's already made some clarifications. He's made some clarifications about mindless prayer. He's given us a model prayer in chapter 6 in verses 9 and following. And so we've seen some things about prayer. But what's he doing here? What's he doing here that's different? Ask and you receive. You mean there's not some sort of caveat? Yeah, but if you don't change, or if you do this, or you don't do that, or this. What's different about here? What's missing? It's none of the yeah buts. There's nothing there. Stipulation-wise. I think Jesus is trying to teach those who are going to be in the kingdom. You're going to experience kingdom life where I'm the king and you're my followers. I want you to know that when you get into the situations where you have a need, you need to know I'm listening and that I care. Now, how, as a sovereign, how does that set him apart from every other sovereign that's ever been on the throne? How does that make him different? Has there ever been a king? I mean, even King Arthur. Was King Arthur able to give the people everything they wanted? No king. Solomon, smartest guy ever to sit on the throne. Wisest. Did he give people everything they wanted? What sets Jesus apart from every other despot, every other person sitting on the throne, is he's a Savior who wants to give. He wants to provide. He's a Savior you can go to for help. So that's the way kings are. That people depend on the king. They go to the king for assistance. They want encouragement. They want to know they can take care of themselves, and he's there to help them take care of themselves. Well, every other king's failed. But Jesus, And so I think what Jesus is wanting to do here is to let them know, look, kingdom life's pretty good. You get in there and you have a need, God's all ears. He wants to hear what you're struggling with. He wants to hear what you're being challenged with. Don't let his greatness intimidate you. I think 2 or 3 weeks ago I had a lesson on prayer, and I think I called it I Need Your Prayers. And we were really introducing our prayer program, praying for our teenagers. And if you hadn't signed up for that, please do sign up for that today. I think it'd be great. And the more we get, the more we can pray for them. And more they can know they're being prayed for. And so we really want it to be a special program that we work on during the rest of the year. It's doing the teenagers this year, and hopefully we can expand it to include the little children next year. So we're just kind of trying it out to see what happens. But we don't need to be intimidated. God's magnificence is not so great that we should feel insufficient or unworthy or feel like that we're in, when you stop and think about your place, your station, compared to his station, his place, it can be a little intimidating. It can be overwhelming. But I think Jesus is saying here, God is truly, truly plugged into you. He's truly interested in what you're dealing with, and he wants to help you any way that he possibly can. So I think in a powerful way, Jesus is saying in this part of the sermon, you've got a God who cares for you. He really cares for you. And so I want you to have confidence when you come to him about your needs. Remember in the Beatitudes, he said, the pure in heart were those who are going to see God. If you're pure in heart, that's the kind of person who is going to be with God forever and ever and see him face to face. Well, a praying person, through their prayer life, is going to be able to see God now through the eyes of faith. And so we start somewhere, and that's where, and that's communication with him has got to be the place we start. The peacemakers will be called sons of God because, God and his family together, connected with one another, just like the Father takes care of his children. Our God is a caring kind of person for his children. So if I want to be considered a son of God, then obviously I want to be the kind of person that is a peacemaker as well, from chapter 5, verse 9. Love your enemies and become a son of the Father, chapter 5 and verse 45. In chapter 6 and verse 30, he says, that's 5:30. 6 and verse 30, he said, if God so clothe the grass of the field, which today is alive and tomorrow is thrown in the oven, will he not much more clothe you, O you little faith? I have a God who's genuinely interested in my welfare and my well-being. And he is a God who is going to be there for me. Yes, sir? Yes. Yeah, we don't believe you do it. Even these verses, like in chapter 6, where he says, don't be this way. If you really love God and you want a relationship with him, then you're going to be the opposite of what God didn't want you to do. You're not going to pray to be seen of men. You're not going to give your alms to be seen of men. You're going to be the kind of person, because you love God, that you have that you've got his well-being in mind. If you really love God with all your heart, you're going to see your work and your life as being His work because you got that relationship with it. Yes, ma'am.
There was a point you made in that sermon that you preached that really hit home when you said, because I know when Abraham was discussing with God about the destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah and saving, so many people,
Are you talking about the sermon a couple weeks ago?
that you made the comment that we have the power to change God's mind. I never had thought about that.
Isn't that amazing? We have she's saying I'd made a point in that sermon about how we have the ability through prayer to change God's mind.
I never had thought about it like that.
Yeah.
That I changed God's mind, but Abraham did.
Yeah. Abraham was, he was trying to work a deal, wasn't he? He was trying to work a deal to save that city, and God was giving in.
Because I had somebody say to me not long ago that they said, I don't understand. They said, God knows everything that's going to happen. And in their mind, I mean, we could get stuck on that. God knows everything's going to happen, so, the destination kind of thing would be there. So I had to discuss with him that we have choice. God
Yes.
gives choice.
Right. I know people do get caught up with God knowing the end from the beginning. But just because He knows what the end is going to be, I've thought, well, if He knew the end like it was going to be, why didn't He just step in and not make those people? He didn't do that. He gave them an opportunity while they were alive to make the choice. And that's why we just can't take a chance. Yeah. Yeah. I think time, works on us. It's just easy for us to forget.
There's a saying, but it's where the preacher told in the pulpit, he told his congregation, he said, we needn't rain, we're in a drought, we need rain. Let's all go meet on this hill right here. And y'all all come, and we're gonna have prayer on this hill, pray God for rain. And when he got up there, he's the only one with no rain.
Those of you who didn't hear it, she's talking about the preacher that said we need rain, went up on the mountain. And I would assume there was a big crowd there, but he was the only one that had he's the only one that had an umbrella. I like that. You got to be the kind of person that believes. You got to have believing prayer. Yeah, that's right. Very, very, very good. Very good. Yes. Oh, yeah. Chesterton Lewis.
they miss out on, Bible study. I'm not gonna ask, hey Scott, let me ask you that, I'm not gonna do that during a sermon, I'll do it now. But a lot of people go through life with questions and comments like was made a few moments ago about changing the mind of God. If we don't discuss it, we miss that, and we learn from one another. But the thing about God is that we try to put him into an earthly form. Talking about changing the mind of God, God knowing, he does know the whole story. He knows the last day of my life. And it's hard for me to comprehend if he's going to let us go through all that, why does he put us through it? Why does he do that if he knows the end result? Why doesn't he just eliminate all the heartbreaks? And people say, well, God was keeping me here for a reason. That's a cop-out. That's a cop-out. You got here with a reason.
That's right.
It was to serve God. It was to serve God. That's the whole reason. And we miss out on that when we don't see God. That's we came back to Kentucky. You used an illustration a while ago, something in one of the scriptures. When you are in covenant relationship with God, you see God everywhere. You see him everywhere.
That's right.
The heavens cry out, nature cries out, even evil cries out, there is a God.
That's right.
But we live our lives, if we live in a carnal mindset, we're trying to put him in a square box, and God does not fit a square box.
That's right.
And it's okay not to comprehend God. It's okay. But like Brother Maxim states, you can take any discussion about God and spiritual things. You take it as far as you want. At some point, it's going to come down to this: do you believe?
Mm.
Do you trust God? That's what it's all about. It's not about comprehending or understanding. We got to understand now. It's not
Yeah.
about our understanding. But one of the songs we discuss sometimes, the songs that we sing that maybe we shouldn't sing. But one of the songs that I love to sing as much as anybody is "Farther Along." That song says, "Farther along, we'll know all about it." We're not supposed to know all about it. We trust it.
Not here anyway, for sure. That's right.
Living in the now with your faith, I think is very important.
That's right.
Don't try to think for him. You live in what's going on right now, and you give to him right now. Believe in him right now, and do right then, and then let it go. Wait.
Yeah.
Just let it go. Don't worry about it, because you can't change what has happened.
Right.
But if there's bad things that happen, where did you put your faith at that time? Where did you get your strength? Where are you gonna turn? That's what he wants to know from us, I feel like that.
I think that's why he lets things happen. Bad things do happen to good people. Why does God let that happen? Well,
We just have to live in that moment,
yeah.
still hanging on to him,
Mm.
still believing, still praying. Because when we're in the bad zone, when something terrible has happened, where are you gonna get the strength to go?
That's right.
And that's what we have to learn about before and after.
Right. You're right.
Put this in motion. He started it all. God's not a micromanager. He lets it happen. I can't stop the man that runs the stoplight and hits my car, kills my family or whatever. I can't stop that guy. And God won't. He put it in motion. And that's the thing we can't wrap our head around. He put it in motion. I've heard people, well, it was his time to go. I don't believe that. We all have a set time, I understand that, but we're not predestined.
No.
The man that's drunk gets in the car and kills the family.
May not have been their time.
It's a cause.
He shortened it.
We can't understand it. It's beyond our comprehension. God's thoughts, if you read about his thoughts, his little bitty
Yes, sir.
And we can't wrap our, we think, well, Einstein was smart. In God's sight, Einstein was dumb as a brick.
Yeah, in comparison, you got that right. Yeah.
Adversities that we have is just getting us ready for the next one.
Yeah.
That's kind of how I look at it anymore.
Well, especially the older I get, the more I feel like it's just getting us ready for the next one. But I think the real challenge for us is to keep that track record in mind when the adversity does come. We got to remember. Well, what happened last time I was in a pickle? What happened the last time I was, at the end of my rope? God, if anything, He's been consistent. He's been there. He's gotten us this far.
When I lost Lee, I said, God was trying to make me, I guess, a better person. And when I lost Pete, I thought, well, what is this trying to teach me? What am I going to do with that? And you just kind of just try to keep struggling.
And the thing, you make a valid point. We do wonder when these horrible things happen to us, why this happens.
And I don't think we talk about that enough.
No, we don't. We don't. The reality is, there are some questions we ask that we may never get answers for in this life. But what God gives us is time. He gives us time and to get our brains around it so we can function. And but the important thing is, in the meantime, hold on to what you got. Hold on to the faith you have, that foundation that you have, because that's what's going to get you through.
We have two people in the Louisville area, and they just lost their 16-year-old daughter. She just got her driver's license in 3 weeks prior to the accident. And the way that they have honored her, put it on Facebook, but how the kids and how the parents have, they're devastated.
Oh, yeah.
Never one of them, but that what they have given such a great example of their faith and where they're going astray.
Yeah.
And that whenever we go through trials, like you say, we don't know what God planned. But how you react to it can maybe break or make a person who's struggling with their own faith or just faith in general and need that strength. Not using, it's just there. Okay? Whenever you go through something, I'm realizing through this of what they're going through. The kids, this was very amazing. The kids at school, they took her parking spot that she parked and they roped it off. They wrote on it, Lucy, just in little ways, but they put candles out, came together, they prayed together. And I'm sitting here going, wow.
Yeah.
Most people fall apart to a way that they want to hide under a rock. And they didn't. They let their light shine. And the mother, she has put on Facebook, it's such a celebration, even though she's living the tragedy.
Well, and that's one of the practical things of the Christian life. We hear the admonition of chapter 5, 13 there. You're the light of the world, let your light shine, where people see your good works, glorify your Father. But when you hear about occasions where people are, in the mire, in the struggle, dealing with huge, huge things, you see them doing it, it's something that fulfills. You may not even intended to do so, but you're fulfilling that directive. I think sometimes we look at God's commands, Jesus' commands, and say, okay, this is something I got to do, this is something I got to do, this is something I got to do. But you get it in your heart, and you get it in your mind, and then stuff happens, and you respond in a faithful way. That's really where it works. That's where Jesus is trying to get you to, where it's not you're sitting there going, oh, I need to let my light shine. You're letting your light shine. when you deal with these hardships. I've heard some stories. My grandfather, he died as an elder in the church. But she would tell my kids that my granddaddy was a drunk when they were married, young. When we were raising her, when she's telling my grandkids, you love your grandpa, but he was a drunk. And he beat his kids, and he beat me. I'm going, Granny, why are you telling my little kids that for? She says, because I want them to see how God's work and God's word can change a person. How he died was a faithful Christian. How he died was this guy that would get up every morning and go out to the hospital and just go knock on doors of every room and say, hey, can I pray for you? I'm going, wow. And that's the guy we want to remember. That's the guy I want my kids to remember. But, maybe it's not bad for them to hear. I think one of the things that Adam brought over the weekend, he said, sometimes we just protect our kids too much. I hear parents, kids 9, 10 years old, wouldn't dream of taking their kids to a funeral because they're just not old enough to deal with death. Well, have all your pets lived? Have they gone to school? Have they been with other people? Sometimes we just so protect our kids and then we don't protect our kids. I always say, we just go in so many directions with that. But we got a God who is consistent. And I love this comment, these thoughts, because it really does. It is a testimonial, and we need it. I need it to be reminded that God is a God who works. My granny prayed for years and years for that man. And she got those kids up, and she went to church and left him there with a can of beer in his hands. And she went, and she went, and she went. And finally, there was that day when he came down the aisle. Wow. I remember the day. I was there. I saw it. And I've never forgotten it. God can work on people. And he works on them through us. And Jesus is saying, look, if you're one of his, he is truly interested. He's truly interested. And so, you're trying to walk with him, and you have a need, just ask him. What is it about asking God for things? Being able to talk to God. First Thessalonians 5:17 says, pray without ceasing. And we just kind of freak out about that. Why is that so helpful? When you're praying to God, in proximity to God, where is he? He's as close as he can possibly be. And the more you're praying, the closer he is for a longer time. It's just a marvelous thing. You will have more of a happier, stronger spiritual life. So, Father feeds the animals, chapter 6. He's going to take care of you. Oh, you a little faith. You gotta trust in him. Ephesians 3 and verse 20 says, now to him who is able to do far more abundantly than all we ask or think, according to the power at work within us. Now you try to get around that. Get that around your mind and your thoughts. If you can get that firmly planted in your mind, then you're well on your way to know this kind of God that you serve. He's truly interested in what you're saying. Okay, I am not going to get into any more. I'm just going to stop there. We'll pick up the challenge of Jesus. Actually, Brother Charlie will pick up the challenge of Jesus and take you through the rest of the lesson and into the next one if he has time, but I have a feeling y'all will. This is something that's on your heart and on your mind, so it's good to talk about it, good to think about it. So, thank you much. Appreciate your comments this morning. Hope y'all come back tonight.